Hi there people, welcome to Escapism Cooking. It's Mandy and today I'm making a dish with a very fun name, I think. It's called Big Plate Chicken. It's exactly what it sounds. It's a ginormous plate of stewed chicken with very chewy and thick noodle on the bottom to soak up all that braising sauce. It's a very iconic dish from Xinjiang. My version is basically much more robust, much more spicy, but you know, if you're not a spice lover, you can tweak the ingredients to make it not so spicy. Let's start with that noodle dough, and it's called leather belt noodle 皮带面. Here I have a dough. The ingredients of the dough is very simple, basic: flour, salt, water. That's it, okay? And it's a 50% hydration dough, and which means it's pretty dry. So once the dough is mixed together, I like to cover the bowl and basically let the dough rest for about 10 minutes to 30 minutes. The longer, the better. So it's been resting for 30 minutes and now I'm gonna knead it for another 15 minutes. So I have a food processor that's gonna do this for me, and I would really recommend that you do. If you're kneading it by hand, 30 minutes, I think, at least. If you're into a workout or something like that, you know, knock yourself out. So while that's going on, you can prep your chicken. It's very simple. You just cut it into this size. It doesn't have to be uniform. What's important is that you must include the bones and the skins. So do not use boneless, skinless thigh or breast. That's not going to bring you to a happy place. Now I'm going to marinate this first. And the first thing I'm going to do is I will have dry bay leaves, okay? And dry chilies. And then the next thing is extra dark soy sauce. Extra dark soy sauce is usually there for color instead of flavor. And color is important. And then I'm simply just gonna toss this together. You can see how absolutely gorgeous that dark soy sauce is giving to the chicken. And actually it's kind of like my secret weapon to like chicken gravy, because just a touch of dark soy sauce is gonna give you that really rich caramelized color in your chicken gravy. Cover this in the fridge, and I usually marinate it for at least 2 hours, but in this case, I'm actually gonna do overnight because I want my dough to rest overnight. The dough needs to rest for at least 2 hours before cooking as well. But I usually, in this case, I'm gonna do overnight because it creates a chewier, silkier texture in the noodle. But if you're in a hurry, you have to do it on the same day, that is fine too. The dough is ready, and it should look something like this. It should be smooth, elastic, okay? But it's still a dry dough. Right now, I'm gonna roll this dough out into 12 inches long and 8 inches wide. Try to shape them with sharp corners like this instead of a big oval shape. I basically need 16 equal rectangles that is 1 inch wide and 6 inches long. Now these needs to be rested for at least 2 hours. And like I mentioned before, I'm gonna do overnight, but if you have to do it on the same day, at least 2 hours. Instead of coating them in wheat flour, I use tapioca starch. So why? Because starch does not bind with water when they're not cooked. So it's a much better agent to prevent sticking. Tapioca flour gives the noodle a nice shiny surface on the noodles instead of a dull, less reflective surface if you use wheat flour. What you're gonna do is you're gonna make sure that every single piece is gonna be well dusted, well covered. I just basically leave it into a sheet pan, a tray, or whatever you have. It's okay to stack them. This is already a dry dough and you're using tapioca flour, it's less likely that it will stick later on. So there we have, right? All lined up, all nicely floured. And I'm gonna cover this with plastic wrap and basically I'm gonna leave it in the fridge until I need them, okay? But make sure that they come back to room temperature before you proceed to the next step. So I would leave on the counter like an hour at least.
The next morning.
I like to keep my tapioca starch on the side just in case I need more. Very simple. First thing you're gonna do is you're gonna just stretch it with your hand, okay? If there's any thick part, it's not stretching evenly, just switch to the thicker part and keep stretching it until you feel like it's gonna break. You're gonna dust it with a little bit more tapioca flour. So once you have this noodle, right, that's already quite thick, quite long, you're gonna use the thick part of your palm and you're basically gonna flatten it out even more. Oops, see, I was being too rough with the noodle and then it broke, but it's okay, it doesn't really matter. So you're just gonna flatten it out. And it's supposed to be nice and thick. And this is gonna create uneven thickness in the noodle and it kind of gives it that like handmade texture, right? So once you have this done, I like to usually just break it in half because it's easier to eat that way. So I'm gonna demonstrate another one. So here you have this piece. You simply just slowly stretch it apart and it's gonna kind of stretch unevenly in the beginning, but that's okay. Just like, move your finger to the thick part and stretch it out as long as you feel like, you stop when you feel like it's going to break. And then you're just gonna use the palm and you're just gonna flatten that noodle out furthermore. And you can see that I'm holding the other side as I'm doing this. And you're gonna get this nice and flattened noodle that is basically a little bit thinner on the edges and a little bit uneven in thickness throughout. And after that, you can even stretch it even a bit longer if you want to. The thicker the noodle is, obviously the chewier they're gonna be. So depending on your personal preference on how you like your noodles to be, you can stretch it out even thinner, okay? So now I have the second one. I'm gonna break it in half and I'm gonna let it basically rest on a sheet pan. And then I'm gonna finish the rest. Keep in mind that this is my version of big plate chicken, Xinjiang big plate chicken. I'm using what is available to me to make my own interpretation of it, okay? So you can do the same as well. Basically, you wanna find something that has the perfect balance of flavor and heat in your definition. So bell pepper as a base, it's gonna provide that sweet pepperiness, but not heat. And later on, I'm gonna use these other peppers to bring heat to the dish. So, you read the recipe and then go to your local farmer's market, see what's available, and do what's best, for you. Okay, so I have 215 grams of red bell pepper, and I'm going to put them in this immersion blender. Next thing you may not see in a lot of big plate chicken recipes is Sichuan 豆瓣酱. And it's usually translated into broad bean paste. It's basically the foundation of Sichuan cuisine. And of course, big plate chicken is not Sichuan cuisine. It's from Xinjiang, but I'm using what I have on hand as a substitute, and it brings complexity and a very fermented deep chili flavor to the dish. So it's not a traditional ingredient in dapanji, but I like it. Next thing I'm gonna use is chili flakes. And I have my own mix of chili flakes, and it's very spicy. But if you really just as a beginner, then I would say you can substitute half of the gochugaru with sweet paprika, which is not spicy at all. For sweetness, which is usually very crucial in all Asian cookings, is I'm going to use strawberry jams. This is obviously not a traditional ingredient. Now I'm gonna puree this with an immersion blender. That's the consistency that you're looking for. These chilies are actually gonna go at the end of the stew so that they remain their crunch. I'm going to cut them in what we called a diamond shape, which is I rotate it like 45 degrees or so every time I cut, and it's gonna give you these diamond shaped cuts. And I'm gonna use like all different colors just because it's gonna make the final dish pretty. And I just like set them aside on a bowl like this. One thing that's slightly unusual that I wanna just mention is the spice mixture. I'm using a spice mixture that is accessible and it creates a lot of flavor. But the one thing that I would actually encourage you to go out there on Amazon and whatnot is sand ginger powder, okay? And I just think that it's the best friend of chicken. Like I use sand ginger a lot in a lot of chicken recipes, and it pairs really well with chicken. So that's that, okay? Now, we're ready. I have a big pot of water here that I'm going to boil for the noodle. And in my wok, I have, you can use a Dutch oven, big one, that's fine too. I have my oil, my canola oil, together with toasted sesame oil. And I'm gonna put that on high heat. Once the oil is hot, you can add your chicken. All the soy sauce and everything. And you're gonna spread the chicken out. Try to do it in a single layer if you can. Because we want a nice caramelization. We don't want them to steam. Once you have it spread out like that, sort of, don't touch it anymore for the next 2 minutes at least, okay? Because you want the surface to brown. If you move them too much, it's gonna start to sweat. So just don't move for 2 minutes and let it brown. So after 2 minutes, you can probably see a little bit of browning happening, okay? Now you can flip it once. Try to get the first side now facing up. Obviously, you can't ensure that every single piece is turned like 90 degrees or 180 degrees, but try your best to do it. And then once you think that you have done that, sort of, more or less, you leave it again, untouched, for another 2 minutes. Now, I am happy with the level of caramelization in my pot. At this point, you can add your aromatics, which is onion, garlic, and ginger. I'm not trying to brown the onions or anything. I'm just trying to have it release the flavor. So now the next thing we're gonna add is the chili paste. And then this also needs to brown. Well, not brown, but you're trying to zap the flavors out of them, meaning that you have to zap the water out of them first. Once you think that the caramelization is going according to plan, now you can add the alcohol, which is Shaoxing wine. So let the alcohol cook off just a bit. At this point, you can add the spice mixture. That toast a bit. Now, chicken stock, fish sauce. I'm using fish sauce instead of soy sauce. It just brings a bit more funk. I prefer it. You will not see fish sauce in traditional big plate chicken recipes, but you know, this is my recipe, okay? So go away. Then potato. It's considered quintessential to big plate chicken. And a lot of times you would see more potatoes than chicken in some recipes for restaurants. And that is not because potato tastes better than chicken, it's because potatoes are cheap. I'm going to add my chicken bouillon powder. So now basically you have a stew going on, right? Last but not least, we need our acid component. And in this case, I'm going to use mustard. Again, you're not gonna find this in traditional big plate chicken, but it's an excellent source for acid, and every dish needs acid. I'm going to keep this at a simmer, lid on, and we're gonna cook this for 15 to 20 minutes until the liquid has reduced by a quarter. I wanna show you guys what kind of bubbling level you're looking for. So this, to a lot of people, is not a simmer, but it's not a boil either, okay? Like healthy bubbling. So that's what you want. Cover it back up. 10 more minutes to go. Here are my noodles. Make sure your water is nice and boiling. Once they are in, make sure that you give it a very good swirl so they do not stick together. Once they are nice and separated in the water, just wait for the water to come back to a boil. So I'm just going to transfer this onto my big plate. These noodles are gonna be so perfect, soaking up those chicken juice. That sheen is what tapioca flour or starch is gonna reward you with. Another 5 minutes has passed, and I think we're ready to add the rest of the chilies. A sign that you're looking for, to know if it's ready, is that the oil starts to separate onto the surface. Now I'm going to add all these chilies, and I'm just going to cook it for 2 minutes because I still want them to remain crunchy. Think of the last addition as more of a garnish for look and also for texture. I think we're ready, and I am going to pour this onto the noodle, which is going to be either glorious or disastrous. We'll see. Just pour the whole thing on. Woo! Ta-da! And there we have it. Is this not visually impressive? I don't know what is. There's no need to use a plate for me, but obviously this will be a good dish to share. If you can finish this by yourself, I envy you. I'm jealous. I have a bowl catching the noodle because I knew that was gonna happen. Sometimes I just impress myself. Very, very spicy. Tons and tons of flavor going on. Sweet pepperiness, smokiness. Here's a piece of chicken. It's absolutely leathered up in that chili, concentrated chili sauce. I got a piece of dark meat.
so flavorful because we marinated this chicken beforehand. And the potatoes are thickening the sauce so they grab onto the chicken much better. I'm just gonna keep munching on this. I haven't eaten this whole day. And if you also like big flavors and heat, spiciness, pain, pleasure all at the same time, this recipe is for you. So, if you like this recipe, if you like me doing twists on classic dishes, make sure that you check out all my past videos where I've done a lot of those. So that's it. Now go away. I'm gonna enjoy.